Hello, this is Cubit, episode 2 of the series. Today's theme is France. The last time we covered Germany, a country trapped in the curse of Carl Schmitt's friend-enemy theory, advancing toward conscription, revival, and rapid armament expansion, an extremely case of left-brain rigidity. France, the subject today is the opposite. The President Emmanuel Macron does not stand on the same trajectory of rigid thinking as Germany. That he has seized the very moment America is withdrawing from Europe and is executing an extremely bold strategy. I will delight in the new framework of Europe, and I will be the one who runs the table. But here is a catch. Macron's calculation many collapse from the foundation due to a single cold-blooded opposition put forward by a Russian strategic thinker. That proposition, articulated by Sergei Karaganov, is the nuclear deterrent has lost its power as a deterrent. And today, I want to discuss another major development as well. The European right-wing parties who were initially pro-Trump, why are they now abandoning Trump themselves? The dramatic reversal. Let us begin.
Do you feel a vague unease in the daily news? The US-China rift, Europe sliding toward war, the fragility of energy and food. Yet no one tells you, clearly, what to do. Stepping Down, a geopolitics beyond friend and enemy, answers that question from both the technological and the historical side. Quietly but certainly, the path forward exists. And it is within reach. The independent perspective I have shared again and again on YouTube. The paperback edition is in 2 volumes, totaling 471 pages. Available now on Amazon Books. Why not place, somewhere in the back of your mind, one more lens through which to see the world?
First, what is French President Macron actually doing in 2026? Let me organize the facts. Macron is currently advancing 3 major moves in parallel. The first is a vision of extending French nuclear forces to other European countries. In March 2026, Macron announced an unprecedented bold proposal to extend France's independent nuclear deterrent to European allies that wish to participate. And on May 27, 2026, France signed the Narvik Agreement with Norway in a sudden move. Through this, Norway, a NATO member but a non-EU member sharing a border with Russia in the Arctic, formally entered the process of French nuclear strategy. 9 other European countries have also expressed intent to join similar processes. The second move is a direct challenge to NATO itself as a rule structure. In April 2026, on a visit to Greece, Macron stepped on a taboo in international politics. He stated, Article 42, 7 of the Lisbon Treaty, the EU's mutual defense clause among member states, has greater legal binding power than NATO's Article 5. This was a sharp test put to European countries. Stop relying on a NATO that America may or may not honor, and build an autonomous defense alliance within Europe itself. The third move is the enclosure of the defense industry. Macron has declared that in the EU's defense budget and weapons procurement platforms, the purchase of defense weapons manufactured within the EU will receive priority. The strategy is to aggressively sell French Rafale fighter jets and combat vehicles to other European nations. In other words, he is directly linking the formation of a security alliance to the market monopoly of the French defense industry. An extraordinarily clever narrative. What matters here is that Macron's movement differs decisively from Germany's, which we covered last time. Germany is the rule martyrdom type, grinding itself down to comply with given rules, building conscription infrastructure within them. Macron is the rule creator type, seizing the moment the American-led system breaks down and rewriting the game itself. France, the EU's sole nuclear power and only UN Security Council member, will become Europe's new house. The two operating systems are fundamentally different.
Now let me introduce one particular Russian strategic thinker, the Sergei Karaganov, honorary chairman of the Council on Foreign and Defense Policy in Moscow, and for years a brain trusted figure of President Putin, deeply influential on Russia's security policy. Since 2023, Karaganov has repeatedly argued the following. If it's shocking content, the West has forgotten the true terror of nuclear weapons. What is the meaning of possessing nuclear weapons if you cannot fire them? It is necessary to actually drop several low-yield tactical nuclear weapons somewhere in Europe, Poland, the Baltic state, or perhaps a military site in Norway that has just entered France's umbrella to let them physically experience hell. That is Karaganov's argument. I want to emphasize here, I'm not in any way endorsing Karaganov's argument. Rather, the fact itself that such an argument is being openly articulated within the Russian establishment has already fundamentally rewritten the structure of contemporary international politics. Karaganov's basis for mocking the West is clear. In the 80 years since the end of World War II, nuclear weapons have never been used in actual combat since Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The humanity has treated nuclear weapons not as something to be used, but as something whose threat of non-use deters the opponent. This is what called nuclear deterrence, or mutual assured destruction. If we exchange the nuclear strikes, but countries are destroyed, therefore no one can fire first. This is gravity of mutual mistrust has imprisoned nuclear weapons as weapons can not be fired. But Karaganov decided this as a nuclear parasitism. As thinking that has grown spoiled by nuclear weapons, his logic runs as follows. That West treats mutual assured destruction as an absolute premise. Therefore, even when Russia is attacked with conventional weapons, the West has convinced itself that Russia will absolutely not respond with nuclear weapons. On that premise, the West has used conventional weapons superiority to encircle Russia, suffocate it with economic sanction, and expand the front line through arms supplies to Ukraine. Therefore, the only way is to physically shatter that very premise by actually firing. Then this is the core of Karaganov Doctrine. In short, he is saying that you use nuclear weapons as actual combat weapons. From deterrent device to combat device. If this is actually executed, the 80 years premise of a post-war nuclear deterrence will be quite literally shattered into pieces. Now let us look at the structure of why Macron's nuclear umbrella extension to Europe strategy breaks down in the face of the Karaganov Doctrine. The first, let me organize the basis of French nuclear doctrine. France is one of the few countries in the world with an independent nuclear force. Submarine-launched Baltic missiles, ground-based missiles fired from the strategic nuclear submarines, airdropped weapons. It maintained integrated force across these. The central concept of French nuclear doctrine is dissuasion, deterrence in English. This is a sophisticated psychological game designed to ensure the opponent never fires. Attack France and you will be hit with a nuclear response. Therefore, no one attacks France. Now, this is the basic logic. The fact that Macron is extending this umbrella to Norway and other European countries in 2026 is an application of the same logic. With France's nuclear deterrent backing them, Russia cannot lay hands on European countries. Therefore, Macron can become European new house. That is a calculation. But there is another interesting concept in French doctrine. Ultime avertissement, the final warning in English. That this is a step one stop short of escalation into full nuclear war, of firing a single low-yield nuclear weapon to cause the opponents reason back. A final warning should design to make the opponent understand we are serious. Here lies the further back. Because Karaganov is saying the following, we will, from the very start, fire low-yield tactical nuclear weapons in order to wake the West reasons. That is, to make them physically experience to the fear. In other words, the single move France intended to final warning, Russia used it first as the opening strike. The moment that happens, France's warning step loses all meaning. It is no longer a warning exchange. It is an outright nuclear exchange from the start. And from here, an even more serious problem emerges. Suppose a Russian tactical nuclear weapon were to fall on a military sites in Norway, a country now under France's umbrella. With Macron, at the moment, with French homeland not directly attack, fire nuclear missiles from his submarines towards Moscow. If he fired, Russia's strategic nuclear force would obliterate Paris and Marseille. In other words, could Macron actually take the decision to sacrifice France or for Norway? The sacrifice France for Norway, the Karaganov writes the following. Neither America nor France will ever fire nuclear weapons for the sake of another country. If it means the risking becoming the nuclear ash themselves. Their umbrella is 100% of a bluff. This is a cold-blood duality of the nuclear promissory note that Macron is offering to other countries. Now let us look at another major variable. U.S. President Trump. In January 2025, Trump took his second presidential oath, a return to power under the banner of America First. Initially, many experts understood the Trump administration as isolationist. The view was America will not engage with the world's problem. it will retreat into itself. But entering 2026, it has become clear that the substance of the Trump administration is not isolationism, but rather a more naked and aggressive posture. What could be called predatory imperialism has been laid bare. The concrete examples: in January 2026, Trump formally demanded to seizure or purchase of Greenland, Danish territory, on the grounds that Greenland is indispensable to American security. This was a direct challenge to European sovereignty itself. Toward Venezuela in South America as well, intervention aimed at resources, particularly oil concessions, is advancing. A structure of predation targeting weaker countries. And in May 2026, Trump announced massive additional tariff against the EU, including steel, automobiles, wine, and even semiconductors, a direct blow to the European economy. The EU side activated counter tariffs, and the intense tariff war has begun between the US and EU. In other words, the true nature of Trump's America First was never isolationism. To forcibly encroach other countries' territories, resources, and economic infrastructure for the benefit of American national interest. This is the actual face of the current Trump administration. What matters here is the fact that European countries have begun to recognize this as an external threat. In addition to the conventional threat of Russia, now America, which is supposed to be an ally, has emerged as a different kind of threat. Europe is being pressured simultaneously from two directions, Russia and America. This is the reality Europe is facing as of 2026.
You know when you check a compass and you just trust the needle points north?
Right, obviously.
But imagine waking up, checking it, and north is suddenly pointing south.
I mean, I'd probably assume the Earth's magnetic field just flipped while I slept.
Exactly. And today's deep dive is looking at a political shift that feels, well, a lot like that. We are jumping right into Chapter 5 of our source material, looking at the events of 2026.
Yeah, specifically looking at why Europe's right-wing populist parties completely abandoned Donald Trump.
Right, which is wild. They shifted from their trademark anti-EU rhetoric to, loudly demanding European unity. So our mission today is to impartially analyze the ideas in these sources.
Just looking at the how and the why behind this massive reversal.
Yeah, and just to be clear, we aren't taking any political sides here. We're just following the data provided in the text.
Exactly. So to make sense of 2026, we actually need to look at the baseline set in 2025.
Right, the honeymoon phase.
Yeah, pretty much. During Trump's return to power, European right-wing parties, like France's National Rally and Germany's AfD, they were in near total alignment with his administration.
Because they shared that very strong anti-globalist, anti-establishment platform.
Precisely. The sources show they were basically operating from the exact same playbook. But then 2026 hits.
And it hits hard. The U.S. administration implements these aggressive new tariffs targeting the EU and famously, formally demands the purchase of Greenland.
Right. And suddenly the European rights reaction turns incredibly hostile.
Okay, let's unpack this, because in France, you have Jordan Bardella and Marine Le Pen framing the Greenland demand as, an unacceptable challenge to European sovereignty.
Yeah, Le Pen stated publicly that no one could understand what Trump was trying to do anymore.
Wow.
And Bardella actually started arguing for continental self-defense, urging the EU to unite against American pressure.
Wait, hold on. I'm looking at the notes on Germany and the UK. Nigel Farage and the AfD Politicians whose entire careers were built on tearing down the EU are suddenly defending European unity.
It's quite the pivot, yeah.
Germany's AfD co-leader Alice Weidel criticized Trump for breaking his non-interference pledge, and Tino Kruppala demanded the total withdrawal of U.S. troops and nuclear weapons from Germany.
Which is a massive geopolitical earthquake.
Demanding the removal of American nukes? Absolutely. I mean, did their entire political ideology just collapse overnight? Is this sheer hypocrisy?
What's fascinating here is, well, our sources suggest this isn't an ideological collapse at all.
Really?
No, it's actually the ultimate expression of their consistency. The analysis describes these nationalist parties as having a two-layered operating system, let's call it.
Okay, 2 layers. Walk me through that.
So the top layer is symbolic. That's the anti-globalism, the anti-EU slogans, things like that.
Right, the stuff you see on the campaign posters. But I'm struggling to see how the U.S. trying to buy Greenland or imposing economic tariffs suddenly makes American troops in Germany a threat. How do those things connect?
It connects through the foundational core layer of that operating system. And that core layer is physical national sovereignty.
Oh, got it.
The absolute bottom line for these parties is protecting physical territory and domestic economies. So in 2025, the symbolic layers between the U.S. and the European right aligned perfectly.
But in 2026, attempting to annex European territory and launching aggressive tariffs threatened that foundational physical layer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The tariffs weren't just seen as an economic shift. They were interpreted as an act of geographic and economic aggression.
Which is why the response escalated all the way to demanding military withdrawals. Here's where it gets really interesting. It's a bit like, a local neighborhood watch that spends all its time complaining about the homeowners association.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Right. Like, they hype paying the dues, they hate the strict rules, but the second an outsider shows up with a bulldozer threatening to pave over a few front yards, they drop their grievances and immediately team up with the HOA to defend the neighborhood.
The mechanics are very similar, yeah.
Yeah.
The immediate threat to physical boundaries forces them to use whatever institutional structure is available.
Which in this case happens to be the EU.
Right, to protect themselves. Because for a nationalist, national sovereignty is the final fortress. When that boundary is tested, even by a former ally, the core layer takes absolute priority over any symbolic alliance.
Wow, so the slogans just get tossed out the window.
Pretty much. I mean, Farage even framed this nationalism explicitly as a breakwater against American hegemony.
So abandoning Trump wasn't a betrayal of their beliefs then. It was just a defensive prioritization of physical sovereignty over their usual slogans.
Exactly.
But this shifts the ground for everyone. For you listening, whether you're invested in global markets, working in international supply chains, or just trying to understand the stability of the Western world, a suddenly unified and militarily assertive Europe changes the equation.
Completely. It redefines trade agreements, international defense contracts, and, well, even the basic assumptions about global security that have been in place since the Cold War.
Which leaves us with a critical question to ponder.
Yeah.
If a threat to national sovereignty can force traditionally anti-EU factions to demand a unified, fortified Europe against America, how might this unexpected European solidarity permanently reshape the continent's military and economic alliances long after 2026?
That is the big question.
The political compass hasn't broken. The magnetic poles have just permanently shifted. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Now please pause and consider. The European right-wing parties have long flown the banners of anti-EU and anti-globalism. Why are they now arguing for EU unity against America? A position that seems to contradict their original stance. At first glance, this looks like a collapse of the right's ideology. My reading is different. On the contrary, this is the most consistent possible expression of the right ideological OS. Let me explain. The operating system of right-wing parties, particularly those grounded in nationalism, has 2 layers. The upper layer is a level of symbolic banners. Anti-globalism, anti-EU, anti-liberal. These are the slogans. They function as outwardly visible flags. But the underlying layer beneath them is the level of physical sovereignty. One's own territory, one's people lives, one's economic infrastructure. These must not be violated by anyone. This is the true core of nationalism. Through 2025, Trump's America's past, the European rights, anti-EU, aligned perfectly at the upper layer, the level of anti-globalism symbolic banners. They were bounded together by the common story. We are all patriots seeking to reclaim our country. But entering 2026, what did Trump been doing? The Greenland seizure demands, tariff bombs on the EU, resource extraction in South America. That these are forcible violations of the physical sovereignty of a European nation. At that moment, the priority order between the upper layer and the underlying layer became visible within the European light. The physical nation sovereignty was prioritized over the symbolic banner of anti-globalism. This is a purest expression of the light operation system's consistency. Because for nationalism, the national sovereignty is the absolute, never to be surrounded final fortress. Anyone who violates it becomes an enemy, even if they are the fellow anti-globalist. In other words, the European right was not betrayed by Trump. They abandoned Trump themselves. This is not a collapse of their ideology. It is the deepest possible fulfillment of their ideology. Up to this point, we have looked at the dark structure of European current situation. The Germany's rapidly, France's gamble, the great reversal of the European right, the having lost the American shield, European in turmoil, each part driven by its own operation system. That is a 2026 landscape. So is the path of a rational diplomatic resolution that beyond this structure entirely closed. There are actually several diplomatic cards are moving beneath the surface. Let me introduce three. The first is the US-Russia back channel. Between Trump administration, Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and the Russian side Representative Cliff Dmitriev, the 28-point peace plan has been under formulation since late 2024. The contents are extremely favorable to Russia. Constitutional inscription of Ukraine's NATO's non-membership. The setting of force ceiling, the recognition of Russian sovereignty over Crimea, and the full eastern Ukraine oblasts. Ukraine general election within 100 days. The lifting of sanctions against Russia, and Russian return to the G8, among others. From January to February 2026, 3 rounds of working level consultation were held in the UAE and Switzerland. But the gap with Ukraine and Europe, which refuses territorial concession, did not close. The talks are currently stalled. The second is what I call the Schrader card from the Russian side. On May 28, 2026, on the slide line of EU foreign minister meeting in Cyprus, the Russian side proposed let us bring in former German Chancellor Schroeder as a mediator. The Schroeder, who once served as the chairman of a Russian natural gas pipeline company that is one of Putin's allies, a figure who knows the era of order economic integration. However, Kaja Kallas, the EU's High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, immediately denounced this proposal as a Russian trap and rejected it outright. The EU, judging that Russia has no genuine intent for dialogue, is currently prioritizing preparation of the 21st sanction package against Russia. The third is China. China's viewing from the heights. In May 2026, Beijing received President Trump from May 13 to 15, followed by President Putin from May 19 to 20. The media buzzed with anticipation, is China going to mediate? But the reality was different. China is treating this war as a Putin's problem, coldly keeping its distance. There is not 1 millimeter of intent to become a neutral mediator. In short, the diplomatic cards do exist, but all of them have fallen into dysfunction. That is the current state. Let me organize the discussion so far. What covers Europe in 2026 is a complex collision, the space between left brain systemic dependence and the right brain physical runaway. Germany, which we covered last time, is a typical left brain type. Within given rules, even grinding itself down to build conscription infrastructure, unable to escape from the Schmitt's friend-enemy theory as the ideological operating system. France's Macron, whom we cover today, is a right-brain strategy gambit, seizing the moment when rules are crumbling, attempting to become the new house himself, flexible and bold. Yet even this right-brain gambit becomes a castle built on sand in face of what Karaganov has put forward, the operational weaponization of nuclear weapons, which is more fundamental physical runaway. And the European right is yet another right-brain reaction in different direction. Faced with the physical reality of Trump's predatory runaway, they rewrote even their own ideology and return to the physical reality of sovereignty defense. The three different operating systems, each calculating its own survival in its own direction. The result is Europe's current landscape. What should we learn here? It is that this is asymmetry between thinking that depends on rules and thinking that exercise physical force. Those who matter themselves to the rules stands frozen when the rules collapse. Those who use the rules as a tool, they see the moment of collapse as opportunity. But before, those who would physically shatter the rules themselves, the Karaganov-style mode of thinking, all calculation may be nullified. Europe has already climbed to what I might call the seventh station of the mountain of major war. Can it turn back? or must it continue to climbing? Then no one knows. But one thing is certain, there is no answer along the extension of the friend-enemy dichotomy. That was made clear in episode 1 on Germany. And even Macron's right brain gambit to become the rule house can be nullified the moment the Russian side chooses as even higher order right brain move, the shattering the rule with physical force. This is a cold-blooded structure of Europe of 2026. Episode 2 of the series, we covered France and the European right, the Macron bold strategy, the Karaganov nuclear doctrine that may break it, and the self-consistent dramatic reversal of the European right. What the three developments have in common in a deep collision around the relationship between rule and physical force. If Germany is self-destructing under the rigidity of its thinking framework, France is gambling with the flexibility of its thinking, but even that flexibility is fragile in the face of a more fundamental physical runaway. This is the 2026 European landscape. The next time, the final episode of this series, we will cover another major power that operates in an entirely different dimension from Europe. It's China. Why is the China treaty theory of established media so off the mark? Is what Xi Jinping is truly aiming for military conquest of the world, or something different? And within China's gravitational field, or should Japan stand? The title is The Lie of China's Threat Theory, the Xi Jinping's true goal of reviving the tributary system and Japan's choice. The same time, next Saturday. Thank you for watching. This was Cube.
Tributary.